After a very high voltage first session of the day, third session of the conference about the social media and how to surf on the waves of opinion, which just concluded before the tea break, we are now moving to the business of media. I wouldn't say it is any more serious than all other serious issues that we've tackled, but this is what makes the mayor go. May I invite Shrikant Khandekar, Shri Jwalant Swarup is already here, and Shri R.R. Gopalji to take their places on the dais. Mr. Gopalji, can you hear me? Mr. Gopalji, can you hear me? Is he coming? I am fortunate to be on the panel with these three veterans. And because Mr. Amitabh Datta, who was designated to be the chair of the session, has had to stay back in Calcutta on account of unavoidable circumstances, I am taking over the responsibility of conducting this session. As we wait for R.R. Gopalji, thank you. We are here to deliberate on the commerce of media, how it is changing and where it is headed. And to do that, I have with me two very eminent colleagues. On my left is Shrikant Khandekar. Shrikant Khandekar comes from a background of political journalism, news journalism, which he did in a very eminent magazine, India Today, for more than a decade. And those were the heydays of this magazine, when magazine journalism in India was defined by India Today itself. And then in the 90s, when advertising and marketing went through the roof, he pioneered the advertising and marketing related journalism. He was the founder editor of A&M magazine, which was the listening post for whatever was happening in the field of advertising and marketing. And when the technology changed for better, he became the founder, entrepreneur, editor of another leading website, advertising and marketing, agency FAQs, which he heads very successfully and has steered it to great heights till now. He comes with an advantage of an overview of the entire media business market. We couldn't have found someone better than him. On my right is Shri Jwalant Swarup. He spent virtually a lifetime at a very leading chain of newspapers called Lokmat and rose to become its CEO and remained there for years. He has handled this business firsthand, dealt with all the pressures of running a successful enterprise in a market which is fiercely competitive. He saw the rise of this newspaper from a regional territory to a pan-Maharashtra audience, taking on the other regional entrenched strong newspapers. So we have from him firsthand the experience of expanding a media business, though traditional, ink on paper, but in a fiercely competitive environment, managing readers, managing advertisers, managing talent within the company, and managing to grow. So we have a very interesting story coming from him. And then on his right is Shri R.R. Gopalji. Welcome to this panel. He comes from, he's a third generation entrepreneur from the family that runs a very successful newspaper down south in Tamil called Dinamalar. Dinamalar is now 10 editions. Dinamalar is about 500 crores in turnover. Dinamalar has more than 1 million copies being bought every day. It is by far the standard Tamil newspaper that people would like to read in Tamil Nadu. managing this newspaper again in a very fiercely competitive environment in Tamil Nadu, where per capita media consumption is the highest in India, is a great tribute. And the family, which is how most of the enterprises, even in media, are run in India, in Bharat. Most of the successful newspapers you find in UP, in Bihar, in Maharashtra, in Bengal, in any state, are family owned, run by successive generations, adapting to new changes, technologies. And that is where we come to how media businesses have evolved in India and how we look at it, look at the scenario. It's a funny situation, and let me come to the very crux of it. There are two revenue streams in most media enterprises, and you probably don't have such a situation in most other businesses. Most businesses have consumers of the product and services who provide the revenue. Here, the consumer, the reader, the listener, the viewer is, yes, the most important component of media, but that's not from where most of the revenues come. While you try and court readers, listeners, and viewers, your another eye is very sharply focused on advertisers who provide the moolah. Now, till 80s, we had a certain balance. It was the beginning of 80s. We had a certain balance because most of the newspapers and media owners were looking at advertising as a revenue stream, but were focused on the reader and the content specially. And circulation was not a losing proposition. It at least broke even. It did not drill a hole in the business numbers of a media business. In 80s, something strange happened. Well, a lot of people attribute to this strange thing to a brainwave of a gentleman who then was taking over the Times of India group. He started the price wars. There was something called invitation pricing. That invitation pricing brought down the price of the cover, the magazine or the newspaper dramatically in order to get more readers. That led to circulation or readership becoming a losing proposition. The more you sold, the more money you lost. And it was sought to be made up through advertising revenue. Because the more you sold, more readers you had, more consumers you had to monetize with the advertiser, and he was willing to pay you more money. This was originally started by Rupert Murdoch when he took over the Times. He dropped the prices from 50 pence to 30 pence. And all the broadsheets, the Telegraph, the Spectator, the Guardian, felt the pinch. Nobody thought that a broadsheet reader, who's a serious reader, who's supposed to be more committed to where he gets his news from, who picks up a newspaper because that's his newspaper, and who doesn't mind 10 or 15 or 20 cents or pence more. But he demonstrated there that at the end of the day, there was something called a commodification of even newspaper brands, and people would respond to and switch newspapers. And it happened in some of the most mature markets that we would call London broadsheet newspaper readers. There was another market, of course, there called tabloid readers, who we could have, easily expected to flip for the price change. But here was the broadsheet market, the serious newspaper readership market that changed. In India, this experiment happened with, of all the papers, Economic Times. Economic Times on Wednesdays started publishing Brand Equity. Brand Equity was a precursor of A&M magazine, was it? It followed, okay. Sorry, yes, I stand corrected. A&M actually necessitated the publication of Brand Equity because A&M had begun to create a niche of advertising and marketing related audience. Economic Times of all the newspapers felt threatened and they said, fine, we will get this niche also into our mainstream newspaper, and they started a supplement every week on Wednesdays. They began to get some traction. There was noticed, this supplement was noticed, these contents were noticed, but the basic newspaper was expensive. So they ran an experiment. A 3 rupee newspaper was offered at 1 rupees 50 paise, half the price, on Wednesdays to the audience. Suddenly the Wednesday swell was more than 100%. People would buy on Wednesdays only for Brand Equity, a newspaper which was available at par with the general interest newspapers. This was a business daily. This proved, and probably this learning came from what London had showed. And when this proved that there are newspaper readers for taking, if you offer them or if you seduce them, if you lure them with the cover price. At the same time, Times of India was waging a huge battle for Delhi against Hindustan Times. And at that time, they thought that they could leverage this price war to beat Hindustan Times, and that's when, for the larger general interest market, 1 rupee 50 paisa was introduced as an invitation price. Rest, as they say, is history. Let me share with you, in 1999, when Hindustan Times was celebrating its 75th year, it was under the presidentship of Deepak Shori, who had just moved from Outlook. And Outlook, what Outlook had done to India Today at that time was, again, a story everybody was talking about. So the gentleman said, fine, let's teach Times of India a thing or two about their own game. They offered the newspaper at 1 rupee. At 1 rupee, without harming the hawkers who were getting their commission of 60 paisa at 1 rupee 50 paisa. So their distribution cost, their trade commission cost, everything taken into account, the newspaper was going for free as far as they were concerned. But by then, because Times of India had a huge circulation, Times of India, when they conducted invitation pricing, they were bleeding Hindustan Times white because Hindustan Times had a larger circulation base to service. So they thought when they drop their prices, they will suffer more. But now they were almost equal. And in this game of one-upmanship, both newspapers were forced to sell their copies at 1 rupee. And let me tell you, in '99, I was paying for each of these newspapers just 1 rupee per copy. In 1982, which was good 17 years earlier, I was paying 2 rupees for my copy of Indian Express, which was 1/4 the size, with no color printing. It was bizarre. But they were out to kill each other. And that is what has dictated what happens in the running the business of media ever since. Content has become free. There was no net at that time to tell us content is free, incidentally. But when such bulky newspapers, 40 pages, color printing, offset printing, delivered at your doorstep, virtually free, you wonder why should you be paying for anything? And here you realize that a marketplace which was just about waking up, thanks to the reforms, thanks to openness, new brands coming, new advertisers coming, there was enough advertising rupee coming into the market in order to make up for the loss of circulation revenues. Well, the going was good and newspapers were making money, though they were losing money on circulation. I realized that this created a huge, should we call it, asymmetry in the marketplace. While consumers were happy, they were getting things for free, and every newspaper entrepreneur, media entrepreneur was dragged screaming and kicking into subsidizing his circulation revenues. Because the competition was breathing down the neck, it became almost like a mantra for all newspaper vendors. I mean, it became a model to follow, it became a business model. What it did to the media market was create entry barriers. You see, you get advertising revenue only if you have a threshold driver, circulation and readership. Till you get those advertising revenues, you cannot subsidize your circulation losses. So weak newspaper or new newspapers could not even contemplate coming to the market, and for a democratic space which survives on plurality of thought, this was a death knell. Because any newspaper that hoped to earn advertising money had to spend time building circulation, building readers. That would take years. And doing that with entrenched media, selling cheap, selling for free, meant bleeding yourself to death even before you became healthy and worth a look from the advertisers. So a lot of newspapers died young. A lot of newspapers are on the verge of extinction. Others have somehow more or less managed to survive. And it has created monopolies. Monopolies in an environment where media is supposed to reflect the plurality of thought. Monopolies which today are not just media that reflects the reality as a passive mirror. These media houses have become players. They have grown agendas. And there's very little room to offer a counter or an alternative, because the commerce doesn't sustain it. So you are reminded of what Chanakya had said more than 2 millennia ago, dharmasya moolam artham, which is also the guiding principle of our economic and business conference. If media is dharma, and this dharma has to survive in democracy, for democracy itself to survive, then to worry about its artha is critical. It needs to sustain itself so that it doesn't fall prey to manipulation and wanton distortions driven by agendas, and often questionable agendas. It is from this context I'm coming today to offer you this panel of worthy speakers. This entire business model has got replicated into television, where more or less content is free, money is paid for by advertisers. It is the norm in net, even at radio, which is for free. You don't pay anything. So today all media, all content virtually is coming free to you. There are salaries to be paid, there are careers to be built, there are interest costs to be paid, there is building, there is infrastructure, there is money to be made by associates. There is paper, there is ink, there is hardware, there is everything, and there is software upgrades, all kinds of things riding on providing content free. Is it sustainable? How is the new media enterprise going to look like in the times to come? How far is this model going to dictate terms? It is on this and more. Please don't feel confined to how I have prefaced this session. I would like to invite Mr. Gopalji to share with us as to what has been his experience from Chennai.
Namaste. very much pleased to be part of this Hindu Media Forum. And I am attending the World Hindu Congress, which was held in Hong Kong, and last year in Bangkok, and this year in Bharat. First of all, I have to thank Swami Vigyan for creating such a platform for all of us to present our cases, express our views, and exchange our thoughts. So today, the chairperson of this session, Sushil Panditji, and the eminent speakers who have been stalwarts in the media, they have been here. So I am a youngster among the big stalwarts standing here, but standing on the foot of the family which has created a legacy in the newspaper industry for the past 63 years. From my grandfather, a great freedom fighter, who started this Tamil newspaper called Dinamalar. We are here, the third generation running the newspaper. And I would like to start my presentation. The print media first evolution in India was in the year 1780. It was started by one Britisher called James Augustus Hickey. In the year 1780 in Calcutta, it was called as Bengal Gazette. And today in Bharat, we have, as per the register of newspapers, we have registered newspapers of 1,119 English newspapers, and the vernacular newspapers of 1,689 newspapers. And there's been an increase in the circulation of nearly 10.25% by the publications in the year 2012 and 13. And the total client circulation of all these newspapers put together is around 45 crores. That is newspapers, periodicals, and the niche magazines, a lot of things which is come in the publications. And that's the total sale is around 45 crore. It is being climbed as per the RNI details. The economics of the newspaper, because Sushil Panditji had, in brief, he has explained a lot of things. He has made my job easy today. And as all of you know, the traditional print media survived on two major revenues model. One is the circulation, that's a cover price subscription, what we get. And the other one is the advertisement revenue. And our major cost is the operational cost is the creation of the editorial content, pre and post press, the production of the newspaper, and the newsprint, which is a major consumer cost. Then comes the distribution. It's day by day. It is becoming difficult for the print media to create the new distribution channels and the admin overheads. And all of you know, and Sushil Panditji also mentioned about the cover price. None of the newspapers actually sell what they produce. The production cost and the sales has no meaning today. It's literally the content of the newspaper is given as free. At least some vernacular dailies like ours, we have at least today we price it at 5 rupees in Tamil Nadu. There we, the media owners, have a better understanding among ourselves. We don't try to kill each other. We try to survive on the strength of our content. That's one good thing in our state. We have some better understanding. So we all sit together and decide the price, and we minimize our losses in that. Try to minimize our losses in that. Today the dynamic of the competition. I think all of you like these caricatures. Because when I prepared this text, I gave it to my expert boy who was there in my newspaper as a caricature. I said, boss, you should have all these caricatures At least that will have an impression on the people who are there attending the conference. And today, emergence of the television industry, and those days we were exclusive people of having the maximum of the advertisement revenue. Today, our major chunk of ad revenues have been taken away by the television channels. And next is the FM radio. Now, another big concern of FM radio is so far news has not been allowed in FM radios. Now that permission is also coming up for FM radios. So that also, there will be a lot of challenges for newspapers because they'll be also getting a lot of news on the radios. And the other one is the online. Online media which is fast growing, and we are also proud to say among the vernacular dailies in this country, our Dinamalar.com, the Tamil online, is the #1 online newspaper, e-paper which has been viewed by the Tamil diaspora to the world. So we have a lot of viewership in that. The effect of the digital media and newspaper economy today. As I said, it's a revenue, the advertisement has been the major revenue. Today there have been a lot of players are there now, from television, radio, the online newspapers, online popular blog sites, the outdoor, the hoardings, the other outdoor activities which are taking place, then the direct marketing, which is also taking a lot of revenues of the newspaper from us. Next is the newspaper staffing. So anyone who wants to venture into television or radio or any blogs or online paper, anything, the first person they come to the newspapers to purchase their journalist. They take our people, the good trained editorial staff, reporters, on all the people who work for to get advertisement revenues. They have been taken away by the newcomers for them. So it is easy for them to take our people, pay them more and take it. So it is becoming staffing is becoming a major issue for the print media today, getting them trained and developing the news sources also. Because news sources are developed through personal relationships and contacts over a period of time. So for them to get the new journalists to get into track to develop news sources becomes a great difficulty because of this new entrance of the digital medium, which is trying to hijack our people outside from our system, from the print media system to their system. And today we are all forced also to adapt to the new conditions of the online. So as we are in the last 15 years back, we adapted to the online medium. Today we are very much well entrenched and we have millions of viewers in online. But at the end of the day, we have to have separate wing of staffs to adapt the newspaper into the online format. So again, it is also having a large cost on the print medium newspaper, as well as the revenue model, because we are all free. There is no pay in that. So again, the revenue model has to be advertisement. So in that way, still it is not a matured market to get the ad revenues for the online version of the newspapers or the e-papers. And for example, the vernacular newspapers, they also have a small below the carpet competition from the neighborhood newspapers. So a lot of neighborhood newspapers are today thriving in big metro cities, where they have been supported by the small advertisement retail clients who traditionally used to be with the vernacular newspapers or the part of if you go and see today HT City, Delhi Times, and all these things used to have small clients who have been spending on those mediums. Now that has been taken out by the neighborhood newspapers because they give it at a very cheaper cost and they don't have big overheads like we have. So for them it's easy. They outsource the printing, weekly ones they give and they carry all this advertisement, which also is becoming a stress on the conventional print media. And coming to these various other pressures now we have, this is a major one is that when there's a global economy slowdown and when there's the GDP of the country, when there's a slowdown on the economy, and the first thing which any advertiser does is he cuts on the budget on the spending on the ads. So that puts a lot of pressure on the newspaper. Plus global economy when there's a rise in the dollar price or a petroleum product price, the other thing is a rise in the imported newsprint price. Most of the quality newsprint is today imported from foreign countries, so newsprint import price goes up, and our printing ink price and machineries also. Most of the good machines are all today. People, readers want multicolored paper, so all the pages should be full of color. It should be colorful newspapers today. So those machines have been imported machines. So we have to shell out a lot of money for that than it has to be because of the rise of the dollar prices. And today's new order of the retail business is e-commerce. So a lot of business is happening in the e-commerce. E-commerce is eating the traditional retail showrooms and businesses which have been in the market, who have been the traditional supporters of the print medium. So they have now been hit because of the retail e-commerce business. So they are also cutting on budgets because we could feel the pinch in this last Diwali business and before that. All our big spenders on retail had cut down the budget, saying that Flipkart is ruining our life. They are putting products below our price which has been sold in our MRP price. Whatever the price they put in the showroom, Flipkart sells 30% below that. So today we are having a tough time. So sales has come down, and today from footwear to sari to any product you want to buy, you can buy it online today, which is killing the traditional retail business. That is also again hitting the print newspaper business. As well as the wage board, it's a very peculiar thing to see in the entire media. Only the print is being controlled by the government because the previous Congress governments, thanks to Madam Indira Gandhi, who wanted to have control over the newspaper industry. From those days, they wanted to have control. So they have this wage board, and wage board is what government decides to fix the salary of people, whether they are productive or not productive, whether they have the capacity to take that salary, whether they are like the modern way. You can't do an appraisal of a person, whether he's performing or not, you can't do it. If he's there into your system, he's there in the system. You have to pay him that salary. So that's where the whole thing is happening. And entire media like television, online, FM radio, none of them have this wage board except the print media. And the new law of print media, this wage board, new one, is threatening the owners that they will be put behind bars if we don't implement it. And a lot of newspapers are today in such a loss, they could not even settle the own people. To settle them, they don't have sufficient money to settle them. If they have to settle the people and send them, like giving a voluntary retirement scheme or something, they have to sell the entire assets of the company and sell it, and they have to settle it. That's a condition of that today's print media. A lot of print media people here, they understand how it works today. So at least Modi ji should have some consideration, because we went to the Supreme Court, nothing happened there. And the conclusion is that besides all these things, print media will survive because big players in the English, like how the Hindustan Times and Times of India, after so much of bleeding, still they continue and survive, make a lot of money in that. And regional also, the number one, number two player in every region, and the English medium, Pan Bharat, they will survive the coming days. Urbanization and growing literacy will help the growth, and we have been growing. Not to the expected growth level, but we have been growing it. And upgradation to online is the order of the day for every newspaper. They have to survive, they have to go in for online. To create an online e-paper, online version of the newspaper. So, the final concluding part is that happiness is coffee. Being a South Indian, I am proud to say happiness is coffee and newspaper and the gossips. So we would enjoy, because I used to tell my editorial people that when the online can fight us, when the television, because all of them in delivering the content, they have certain restrictions of time. But we don't have a restriction on that. So we have to give it in a dramatic flow of news where it gives a reader a thrill to read the news. So you should feel that he has read the news. So I also get this all on WhatsApp and Twitter, everything you can get. How Nina told us 140 characters maximum. We can write a story for a full page, we can write a story for a half page. And if the flow is very natural and interesting, papers will be read any day. So, thanks for giving the opportunity to represent myself. Thank you very much. Nice day.
Thank you, Gopalji, for that very interestingly put and all the funny graphics that went with it. I now request Jwalanji.
Some time ago when I met up with Mr. Sushil Pandit and he shared the concept of this conference, I was quite excited to hear about it. And when he requested me to speak here, I was a bit nervous. But nevertheless, having worked in the media industry for good 25-30 years, I can say that I have some insights to share, but now that I have left the industry and has adopted a role of a consultant, the company's name is Happiness Infinite Solutions Private Limited. And that's the reason I got excited when he said the coffee is happiness. Fact remains that now, because I bring the insights of the media industry and at the same time wearing a hat of a consultant, so my presentation probably will be speaking in both the languages. Fact remains that the topic given to me is traditional media and global consumers. In my opinion, and how I feel, and most of us would be, that the tradition gives birth to the new age generation. And so the traditional media is giving birth to the new age media as well, and the new age global consumer as well. Gopalji touched upon that how the new age mediums are poaching the newspaper journalists. The fact remains that that's the way the life evolves, and this is a pretty natural thread that we have. Fact remains that the traditional media in Bharat is growing in double digit annually. There could be certain regions where you could find some difference of percentages, but overall it's a double-digit growth still. Large diverse geography in this country is actually driving the growth of the traditional media, because we see still the bottom of the pyramid pretty large in terms of readers or viewers or listeners. And at the same time, the pace of economy has just set in. Though we have our slumps in between, but fact remains that the pace of economy is just setting in. And we could see that the bottom-up growth may be coming in. So traditional media has some more years and ways, I would say some more years to survive. Tier 2 and Tier 3 markets, as we call in in Bharatiya economy, are actually opening up the opportunities. It's not Delhi, which is a very exciting market. It's actually a Saharanpur or Meerut around here. Similarly, Mumbai is not a very exciting market. Neither Pune anymore. But actually it is Nagpur and Nasik and Jalgaon of the world are becoming more exciting markets. And fact remains that, this point actually has been covered in Gopalji's presentation as well. The rural is now new urban. The rural areas that we have been talking about in the past actually are the new urban areas. I met somebody who said that we are finding the high-rise buildings in rural areas, and it will become very difficult for newspapers to go and deliver newspapers in high-rise building. How can you expect a hawker would throw a newspaper to a 25-story apartment? On the other hand, my submission to the gentleman was that as much as land that I see vacant, and if I understand that here is some housing opportunities arising, I see that there is more traditional media's growth happening. So it's just the perspective that you see. Distributing a newspaper at a 25-story building may be a challenge, but this challenge is far more easier to resolve than not to see the cities growing. If the cities are growing, I assume that the traditional media will grow. Fact remains that a traditional ecosystem was surviving because there was a market first, then there were products, and the consumers, and media was actually covering all three. However, just go back. So the products were designed with not much thought in terms of how they would get distributed, because the market complexities were not existing. So the traditional media was easier to survive. Can we go to the next? So what was traditional media? This is one point which I wanted to actually stress upon. A religious thought, a traditional religious thought, print or a television channel. We didn't have television channel, religious television channels of 20 years ago. But we had some magazines, maybe Kalyan if you recall. Now Kalyan is in English as well. The market didn't grow for it. And even today they sell about 150,000 copies odd. They got CD-ROMs, they got some digital presence as well. But the religious thought, as a matter of fact, couldn't really go too long in the traditional media. However, now we see in the television, we got a lot of religious channels which are working pretty fine, and they are because the model of distribution is different. So again it comes back to the market. However, on the political thought, if we look at the traditional media, especially in print, if we refer to newspapers like Samna, or we refer to newspapers like Panchjanya, or maybe Tarun Bharat, and couldn't see them growing too far, because the political thought traditional media again didn't find the market, a traditional market. And so these newspapers couldn't grow either beyond geographies or beyond a certain political threshold. However, the social thought newspapers owned by the Hindu owners could become a far more bigger business model, and that helped the traditional media to grow in Bharat and maybe other places as well. Even if we see the newspapers in other languages, especially even in Hindi and English, I mean refer Dinamalar in Tamil, or Sakal or Lokmat in Maharashtra, I mean they are more of a social thought newspapers owned by the Hindus. However, the new age ecosystem is bringing the new age consumer first. And this new age consumer is who? He is born out of the same traditional families, from the same traditional set of people who have a different attitude towards things. And this new age consumer is engaging more with social media and the e-commerce which Gopalji referred to. So the market dynamics changed. So he's procuring things, he's engaging things. More than that, the two words which have become quite relevant here is engagement and experience. So both are delivered instantly with a gratification as far as the new age technology is concerned. So to invest into presses, I consult some traditional media companies as well, and fact remains that, I mean, it's a huge insecurity to invest into a gigantic machine which could print you 2 lakh copies actually, because there is no future about it. And do you see any future, and do you recover that cost, and what is the ROI? It looks to be very frightening, am I right? And if that is the case, and that those investments will not come in, then probably to some extent traditional media after a certain time would start shrinking. And so that's what Gopalji also said it. Last point, I left it in the previous slide. Can we go there? And so in the new age ecosystem, the market has actually changed completely. What he referred in the Diwali sales is exactly the same story, and this probably would be a larger threat in times to come. Next. So what is the new age consumer engaging overall is user generated content. As we all know, we are creating the content for that, and so he wants to make that content as much relevant for himself or herself. More frequent engagement he wants, and they need an immense amount of freedom to choose and access the content. So traditional media doesn't qualify on this. And at the same time, the new age consumer wants to participate in creating that experience. And this is a very interesting fact that the new age consumer wants his reflection or her reflection into the media. So it's a me in you syndrome. So if he doesn't find you there, if he doesn't find himself there, he doesn't feel he is that particular medium is, or that particular property or asset is relevant to him or her. It's a very interesting statement. English is entertainment and regional is news. I agree with this. I'm sorry if I have offended any English guy here, but I don't know. But that's the fact. And this is true in the entertainment space, or in the news space, in television as well. And it has actually become more entertaining and more unwinding, especially in India at least. I mean, I don't have to refer too much on it. However, this small instrument in our hands actually has changed the dynamics of media consumption overall, be it in Bharat or outside. So, if you look at the biggest market for the traditional media to grow was rural, which has become urban, and rural, so to say, is outsmarting urban in the mobile growth. So what does it mean? That the new urban will have a different engagement. So this is the fact of matter, that the new age consumer is a different consumer. So commerce of media, if it has to be over dependence on advertising, Gopalji has actually covered that point. Yes, it's hurting now. I mean, a couple of days back in Delhi, there was an INMA conference where they were debating how to have the circulation revenues, and good that in South, the people have actually collaborated in terms of distribution and protecting the price lines. However, this is not happening in Hindi or in other language belts. Similarly, in new age media, advertising, of course, yes, today Google has become a fairly large media company in India, garnering about 4,500 crores revenues. But it is also transactional. Traditional, how can that become transactional? That's a challenge to be seen and to be managed, and how we can reinvent. Most media companies have healthy path, most of them. But yes, when you have a wage board pressure or any other pressure, obviously there is an erosion, and then there is a question mark in terms of your further and future investments. Collaboration is an answer, yes, I agree. But intent to collaborate is very, very important, which is missing. Because for one-upmanship. Yes, in content aggregation, we need to have a collaboration. Distribution synergies, which obviously Gopalji was referring, besides coming together on protecting a price line, it is important that you build a distribution synergy where you bring down your cost of distribution. Procurement process is a big thing. Newsprint is a very, very expensive commodity, and how can you build a larger quantity together to have a better rate negotiations with foreign press when we have a foreign newsprint component in our newsprint consumption are very, very large. Change agents in the business, I feel, would be the NGOs, governments and corporates. Advertising rates in any ways are hitting ceilings. It is difficult for any further to have your advertising rates growth too high. Obviously, corporates will push harder for lower rates and stuff, which will compel the traditional media owners to look for distribution revenues in a much better manner. So thank you very much. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप सबका for giving me this opportunity. Namaskar.
Thank you, Julan Bhai, for a very lucid presentation. He made some passing points on collaboration. I know this for a fact that when Anand Bazaar ran into capacity crunch, they started printing part of their print order in Statesman Press. Now, mind you, these two were bitter foes in yesteryears. Now Statesman unfortunately has dwindled too low to be a competition to Telegraph. But this happened years ago. Likewise, Times of India was using spare capacity of Hindustan Times Press in Mumbai, which is barely a couple of years after their launch. And when Hindustan Times was apparently raiding a pure Times of India territory. And the two had fought bitter battles in Delhi. So nobody needs to probably give gyan on collaboration. This is not a sermon. When bitter foes can collaborate for their respective businesses, there is obviously merit in joining ranks, sharing resources. But is that going to happen? Is that going to be a norm in the times to come, where even non-poaching agreements are being signed among newspapers? It was funny. Hindustan Times and Times of India had a non-poaching clause that we will not poach your people and you will not poach ours, because we are essentially transacting in a human skill intense industry. And journalists or content writers are a big resource. So where are we headed? And here we are talking about collaborating across markets and geographies where there is no apparent conflict. Are we able to do things that we are already doing? In fact, a lot of Western publications are getting reprinted and distributed in our society by Indian entrepreneurs. A lot of Hollywood soaps are rebundled, packaged, and are being shown on Indian television networks. Can we go across and pay them in the same coin in their territories? Can we look for, and do we have a set of entrepreneurs in different geographies and markets to enable it for Bharatiya entrepreneurs, for Hindu entrepreneurs from this marketplace? An interesting thought. May I now request Shrikant Khandekar. We will have question answers at the end. Thank you, Sudeep.
Hi, good morning everyone. You know, when my friend Sushil Pandit invited me to speak here on the future of the media business, it raised two questions immediately. The first was, what is future? Because you know, you could, if you're really wise, you could look at the next 100 years, but since I don't pretend to be anywhere there, I had to look at a more specific time frame. So for the purpose of this presentation, I've looked at the next 5 to 10 years. That's one. The next question is, what is a media company? Sorry, I got a bad throat, so you have to excuse me. Traditionally, when you look at print and television, media companies there are fundamentally three legs to a media company. One is it creates content. Second, it has the ability, and this actually tends to get underrated, it has the ability to distribute that content. It's a very powerful thing. And the third thing is that it is capable of then selling those viewers or readers it has got to a bunch of advertisers. So it's fundamentally three things that content companies have done. But ever since Google came on the scene, it is now by far the biggest company in the media space. I think they're still hesitant to call themselves a media company, though their founder Larry Page once did say many years back that, you know, Google is a media company run by technology people. So they are not very comfortable with the idea of being a media company, although they get all their money from advertising. So the interesting thing actually is, that the traditional thing that media companies do, which is they create content. Google does not create content. Facebook does not create content. Yahoo does not create content. They create some content. but they are aggregators. In the case of Google, we know they basically point you to what you want to read. And by just doing that, they earn far more than, I think, one whole bunch of media companies across the world put together. So this is actually a list put together by an agency called Zenith Optimedia of the top 30 media companies. Now if you look at these companies, these are the 5 companies which, to my mind, you would not even think of them as media companies, right? And Baidu is a Chinese search engine plus some other stuff it does. But Microsoft, Google, Facebook, these are not media companies in the traditional sense. So when Sushil just said future of the media business, basically it was, I had to think of what the media business is. Just to restate what this business is in the domestic market, this is the size of the total media business in India. It's 83,000 crore. TV is by far the biggest. Now TV and print, Sushil would know these figures better than I would, but in advertising terms they are pretty close. I think they would be about 15,000 crore each in advertising terms. Both print and TV get that much advertising. But television gets the subscription fees, and which the money we pay the DTH person or the cable operator, that money is actually enormous. In the case of television, earlier it was not reaching the broadcasters, now more of it is reaching. So this is what it is. And please forgive me, some figures may be off by a few thousand crore, but since they are not, it's not my money, I'm not worrying too much about it. I'm just trying to tell you that this is roughly what the size of the business is. And as you possibly know, in Bombay they are very concerned with entertainment, and in Delhi we are very concerned with news, and especially television news. So I want to really, hate to point out that the news business, if you leave aside newspapers just for a minute, in the television business, news is actually very small. It's just 10 to 12%, it made 15%, 10% of the viewing time and 15% of the revenue. But broadly, it gives you a sense. So what I'm talking about, the perspective I'm talking about is not news, okay? I'm talking about overall, okay? And my perspective also is I was a print person for 20 years before I went online. So I'm very comfortable with print and I love it. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm really looking at, and I've assumed that Mr. Pandit meant that I look at what online might do to the media business in the future. So I've made that assumption. I don't know if it's correct. It's too late to change now. So. Okay. Now this is the most interesting thing about the internet is that everything that we create, every other medium. So you look at news channels, you look at newspapers, you look at any form, you look at films now. You can go on YouTube and just watch entire films on YouTube for free. Okay? Music is available, radio stations are available on the internet. Everything goes online. So actually, when it is the sum in some ways of all media, though it may not have intended to be, that's how it's become. Okay? Because people are putting stuff online. And because of that, what it means is, if you're in the media business, it means it's an enormous amount of inventory, all right? And this does not even take into account what people like Facebook are coming and creating new inventory. I'm saying even the traditional media, all the print TV, everything is finally landing on one medium, which is the internet. It creates enormous inventory, because of which all media competes with the other, finally, for advertising and for time, at least. And that's why ad rates, I mean, I've been online for 15 years, the ad rates keep falling every year. Okay? Next one. And consumers aren't paying for content. Okay? So now you have a situation where everybody is putting stuff online. One can always debate the wisdom of whether it ought to have been done, whether you can get away without, by charging people. It's a different debate. So far, there's not been much success, except in very specialized sites and things like that. On a mass scale, I'll take it. So the thing is, the ad rates keep falling, the consumer isn't paying, okay? But this I've certainly discovered over the last 15 years is that, okay, my company, I'm in a very specialized area, advertising, media, marketing. So as I said, there are exceptions in specialized areas, but on a mainstream mass measure, I have not seen that an ad-supported model has actually worked online. I'm not talking about Facebook, I'm talking about traditional media companies. I haven't seen them being able to do it, please. And this is something I always like to point out. I'm very proud of the fact that we as a company were born online and we make our money online, but I think we really are a freak. I hate to admit this, but I think we are an odd case. We happen to be at the right place at the right time, did probably some right stuff and a lot of wrong stuff. But if you look at all the, newspaper or television websites you can think of, every single one of them, remember when you think, online is becoming so big, it is all supported by the main business, which is either print or television. Online by itself, if tomorrow the primary medium withdrew financial support for the online medium, there won't be one site, I think, mainstream media site which would be alive. It would not. I think it's finally the profit from print and TV which are subsidizing it. So I think this is the challenge for media companies over the next 5 to 10 years. Please. Now, these are two questions, okay? How do you monetize the content profitably? That's one question. And they can say that is the challenge. You have to figure out how to monetize the content profitably, right? Or could it be that the challenge is how to monetize the audience profitably? It is not actually exactly, it sounds similar, but actually it's very different. You are a bunch of people who read my newspaper. I'm going online, okay? I'm trying to get ad rates to pay for the news I'm delivering you online, and I'm not succeeding. But if I could get you for an event, if I can sell something else to you, I'm monetizing you as a bunch of people rather than my content alone. So I'm trying to make a distinction. And I think that's something the existing media companies will have to look at in the future. Please. And this is, when people, and in spite of being an online entrepreneur, I like to point this out, that it is a very, very unfair and skewed game. I mean, if you believe the world was unfair, online proves that it is unfair, okay? If you need proof. And this is what it is. I checked these figures just day before, that online advertising is $140 billion, 39% goes to just 2 companies. You add another 8 or 10 companies, including AOL, Yahoo, Microsoft, and you will come to 50%, 70 billion goes to just 10 companies, okay? And 70 is left for the thousands of, people like us who are left here trying to get the rest of it. So it's a very unfair world. And in traditional media, what has happened is that because of distribution restrictions, especially newspapers, I mean, starting a new edition, you have to see what kind of radius you can have from the printing plant. You have a lot of logistical limitations, right? On the internet, there is no national boundary, there is no national defense. I think Indian media companies have some advantage because, especially the regional ones, the language ones, because Google hasn't figured all this stuff out yet, okay? But the fact is that I don't think there's a lot of safety there. The fact is Google sits somewhere in California, or Facebook sits there, they can just reach every corner of the world. So there's no, traditionally you could say that I don't care if New York Times is coming to India, I'll defend myself this way. It doesn't happen now. It's just the fact is they decimate everything. So I think the battle it's for battle for money, and so in online, and this is the thing, the thing is, of course, finally it's a battle for money, but if you lose the battle for people's time, as there was that wonderful cartoon of, a gentleman sitting with a newspaper on a bench and he's looking at a kid next door looking into his smartphone. The battle is first, finally it's for money, but if you lose the battle for the person's time, you are going to lose the battle for the money. It's inevitable. I mean, in all media, when different media grow, and this is, by the way, a very fascinating thing about India, in most other countries, media don't turn by turn. But because of the way India is, and India always seems to be different, I think it's, if not the only country, it's one of the only countries in the world where pretty much all the media is growing. Print is still doing very well. It's a very profitable business. Television is booming, okay? Radio is now going to go to 800 new towns, which is incredible. Radio has reached its peak elsewhere in the West, I don't know when, maybe 30 years back. But we are going to reach 800 towns. Online is growing, out of home is growing. It's an amazing market that way, okay? But the fact is that if you start losing time to another medium, that medium will one day take your lunch. It's inevitable. That's how it goes. So tomorrow's media company. So I'm just now, this is where I start saying some stuff, much of which may turn out to be wrong, but you're never going to meet me again. So there. Okay. Okay. It will be leaner and meaner because I think they're going to earn their money with far more difficulty than they do currently. And I think it will have to redefine its business. If you just say, please carry on. See, this is something I've seen in in my business journalism days across a lot of companies. Nothing to do with media companies, but in all large companies, there is a dominant culture. So in a newspaper, it is the newspaper culture. It involves people writing articles, it being edited, it's being sent to press, distributed. That is that culture. When a new culture tries to grow in that company, it generally finds it difficult. And it's not about newspapers. You could take a company like ITC, which for years together tried to struggle beyond cigarettes. It just couldn't do it because they were so used to the monopoly in cigarettes. Whenever a new venture came up, I think the thing was, isse kya ho jayega? 50 crore, 100 crore, 200 crore. There was some 10. Now they're a very large company, but they never took a subculture seriously. So basically, it's like trying to grow under a banyan tree. It was like that, very difficult to grow. So, and this is the example I want to take because it happened just last week. Okay. I know at least there is this app called Zomato. Are any of you aware of it? You are, okay. Okay, I love it. It helps you find places where you can eat nearby. It's a restaurant finder. Okay? It's, I think, a couple of years old. It's run by this guy whom I don't know called Dipinder Goyal. He's 32 years old. And I'll tell you why I'm telling you the story. It was valued last week at 4,000 crore rupees. Okay. Now that is a higher valuation. It probably, I think, has a revenue of 30 crore last year or 40 crore last year. So you could argue about, is it really sensible to value it? Let's leave it for a second. Do I have a little bit? Am I right? Okay. Now, the reason I bring this up is, so it's more valuable than most newspapers in India. Okay. It's run by a 32-year-old guy, which was 30-40 crore rupees, and he has raised a lot of money, but still. I know at least 2 newspapers, and I don't want to name specific publications, which used to run eating out guides. Okay? And I suspect there is a magazine which used to do the same thing. I suspect there must be regional newspapers which also did it. Okay? So the idea is there's nothing new in the idea. बाहर जाके खाओगे तो कहाँ खाओगे? Basically, ये अच्छी जगह है कि नहीं है? My question to you is, when I say that they have to relook the way, redefine their business and look at the way they allow other plants to grow under that tree, is if would those eating guides ever have turned into Zomato? Had Dipinder Goyal been employed by one of these papers, would he have been allowed to create Zomato? I'm willing to wager never. He would have led to place in frustration because somebody would have said, like, you spend so much money. So the point is there is a certain culture, and I'm not attacking anything. I'm just saying that when there is a dominant culture, it's very, very difficult for other ideas to grow under that. And I think it's their nature, it's in everything. It's very difficult, okay? So, please, right? So, okay, this is the question I already asked. So, I think the question is, that's what I said before, that I think more than just trying to monetize content, as I gave an example, suppose I said, you are my community, can I do something else for you? You all eat out somewhere. Can I create a Zomato instead of just giving you news? But what would have happened if I was the CEO of a newspaper, of a 500,000, 2,000 crore rupee newspaper, I would have said, forget it, yeah. This is one distraction, we are barely being able to manage our business, and that's how it is. It's very difficult, okay? So you need to create communities, and Zomato, that's exactly what Zomato has done. It has created a community. So I know one newspaper company which is pushing very heavily into newspaper and apps, and by the way, Zomato is advertising supported, okay? So in that sense, it is a media business, okay? To what effect, how successful we'll see in the future, but it's entirely advertising supported. I know one newspaper company which is pushing very heavily into mobile content and apps because they say that, listen, advertising ad rates online are so poor, we're never going to be able to pay for the content creation cost, as you know, reporters and things like that. It's just very expensive. The kind of crummy ad rates Google gives you, you're never going to be able to. Google makes a lot of money because they don't pay publishers. One of the things, it's a publisher's point of view, they pay very lousy rates. It's a fact. So to expect to make money on Google is that's funny. Okay, so some of the things I think we'll see newspapers trying to do or have started doing is they're trying events and activation. A lot of newspapers are trying this, but I think with mixed results. Some papers are finding that you can get the top line, but you can't make money. Okay, or you're bundling so much, you're giving away print too inexpensively. You could try. Some papers also abroad have looked at education and training. That's another way of stuff because newspapers are knowledge brands. So when you talk about education or training, people believe that you could be educating or you have you are, let's say, at a higher plane and you are capable of, training people. And this is, I'm coming almost to the end now. There's one big thing, which I've realized, okay, which is that there's also a conflict between media and technology, okay. There's a lot of technology also in media. In television, there's a lot. In newspaper, I'm sure, printing, etc. Even when you talk about newspapers, the fact is, if you work in a newspaper, you wonder where the paper is, because everything is digital. Actually, the fact is that until the paper comes out, even reporters, editors, nobody's working actually. There is no paper as such, right? So there is a fair amount of digitization that's happened. But the fact is, if you look at the people who are eating media's lunch now, okay, and just now they are eating the lunch of the print publishers, but video could follow, will follow, okay, it will be later rather than sooner. But the fact is, it's media companies, it's technology companies which are eating that lunch, okay. And considering that, I think that, but if you look at, we have a web services business. So I've met many publishers, in the course of that work, and I found that many of them resent technology, okay? And I think they feel afraid because technology is the stuff that is destabilizing the business, and it is. But you know what? Technology is very neutral. It has no feeling, if you know what I mean. It comes whether you like it or not, and that is the thing that's going to affect you. So I think I'm beginning to wonder, and I'm just tossing the question actually, is that I wonder if now in very senior management, we need to have people who are very in media companies, and I mean not as the head of the IT department. The top tech guy in the media company is typically the head of the IT department, and he looks after servers and software and networking and stuff like that. All that comes under him. He's not, to my mind, as far as I've seen, not a part of the strategy group. Okay. So if media companies think technology is what is going to hit them, then they better have good guys on their side. I mean, they better have as good technology guys on their side, otherwise the good guys will go on that side and come and eat their lunch, okay? So I think they really need to reconsider media companies, what they're going to do about leadership in the future. That's it. So I would think overall, I'll just go through, the last thing about where I would worry about. I would worry for news far, far more than entertainment. News, whether you can see in television news, it's already, well, you have all those channels and all the entertainment, as Jwalin just pointed out, is because a lot of channels are in it, not for, they think of news as a business, but they see news television as a way of power broking, and they have other businesses to protect. So news television on its own just cannot survive. It is every single news channel is, barring, they may be odd one, I suddenly thought of a couple of them, but pretty much all of them are part of a group, and that's how they survive, although it's not a viable business already, okay? And when it comes to, and entertainment is less vulnerable because entertainment is typically moving pictures, okay? And it requires a fair amount of bandwidth. It's much more enjoyable on a larger screen. So entertainment, I would think so far seems somewhat, better off than news. Within print, I think English is very vulnerable over the next 10 years. Regional, somewhat less so, but I think you would know this better. And I think there's the real strengths, and I think which is really underappreciated in the Indian newspaper business, is the power of distribution. It's tremendous. The ability to reach the home is an amazing thing. We take it as a matter of fact, but in a lot of markets, newspapers never reach home, and that's why people find it very easy to get out of the habit. In India, when it lands at 6:30 in the morning and you're home, you end up reading it. That's it. And the low pricing, though it's a matter of debate, the fact is, it's, websites may be free, but surfing is not free. So surfing costs money. So in India, I think newspapers are cheaper. Television is doing very well. I think so far it's still expanding. There's no immediate threat to my mind to television. Radio is still coming into its own. As I said, all the media is, radio is growing. And I think that is the history of the next 10 years in 12 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Srikanth. The more often you mention who's eating away media's lunch, you are reminding us that our lunch is waiting for us. We will wrap up this session soon. Srikanth made some very telling points. He said that you need to battle for the time of the media consumer. Yesterday we heard from Amit Khanna that engagement is key. I think both of you are on the same page. It's not just gathering numbers, those who come, touch, look at you and go, but the ones who spend time with you. And this boils down the entire debate to content. The right content will get you engagement. The relevant content will get you engagement. And why aren't the traditional media companies getting it right? They are not getting it right probably because they are not on the right delivery system. So there is probably here, there are two ends of this spectrum, the right content, the relevant content, and the delivery of it, delivered on time, delivered conveniently, delivered on the run, without any shackles, without any limitations. So if content generating media companies were to crack the delivery system code, which is technology, which is what he referred to, their lunch is going to be stolen. And before our lunch gets stolen, I would run with a few questions quickly and please identify the speaker you want to hear answer from.
I'm Sadasiva Navaswamy from Hawaii. I wanted to challenge the two revenue stream concept with some creative things that you already know about that others may not. One of them is Wikipedia. So Wikipedia has no advertising. They regard that as a central model for them. And they do fundraising for 30 days every year online. And they bring in about $7 million, and that runs the operation for a year. We have followed that in Hinduism Today, that model, to pay for our digital content needs, and we've done very well. And in fact, we're also building an endowment, which goes to my second model, which is the National Geographic magazine. National Geographic is an extraordinary magazine that is entirely endowed. They don't require $1 to make money. All of the money is made by the money that's in the endowment fund. And they're able to do all of their photographers, all of their writers, all their amazing content from that endowment. And for certain Hindu institutions and journals, that strikes me as a way to get beyond the future money problem. You have enough money in the bank that you can live for 1,000 years without one subscription revenue penny, without one advertising rupee. And I think for certain groups, not many, a small set of groups, this model could be adopted and would build a future, a far future financially. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is to everybody who can answer us, especially Mr. Srikanth. Me and Vikas, we were talking about the same thing. I think you've heard Vikas say as well. How would you advise, or what would you advise people like Vikas, people like people like Sandeep, to monetize what we do, monetize what we're doing? Because Vikas presented the problems that we face.
He wasn't there in the session. Vikas is someone who does the Facebook and the
Twitter, Facebook,
Twitter,
he runs Facebook
he
pages.
runs pages on Facebook for I support Narendra Modi, for Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, for BJP, Modi Sarkar. So they're whole aggregating
Sandeep,
millions of.
Sandeep
she's
runs
into
India
Twitter.
Facts. I'm on Twitter. I'm a content creator writer. Now there are these individuals out there. How would you help us sustain? Especially, we do not want to go the way MSM has gone. Anybody, I'm open to listening to answers from everybody. How would individuals sustain themselves? Most people suggest that go for ads, Google ads, but they don't pay you. They don't pay you as much as you should be getting for all the things that you're doing.
See, one thing is that I think there is no one-size-fits-all answer. I mean, as you just pointed out, there's the example of Wikipedia and NGC, right? I mean, like in the case of Wikipedia, for example, it works because people feel so passionately about it that they would donate to Wikipedia but not anywhere else, perhaps, okay? And NGC was, of course, plain lucky, right? So my point is that I don't know, I think we need to discuss the exact thing, but absolutely right. You know, this, see, the thing is that Google Ads works if it's you run a website from your home and you get a lot of pages, then you get, so a lot of young people do it as something you can do, and that's fine. It's not going to last a lifetime, so you can do it. I don't think Google Ads works. It's far better to try to, so I think what people, typically what media tries to do, so listen, I'm not being very specific, I don't know enough about what you're doing, right? But if you can, so if it is for a cause, such as for a party, for example, no, it's not for a party, right? So then I think the better thing is always to try to build an individual's brand and see you can monetize it some other way. Now one could discuss what those other possibilities could be, but trying to do it online looks very tough to me. Unless you write a blog and somebody sponsors it, that's always a possibility. You know, there might be somebody who says, listen, you know, he writes about this stuff or she does this stuff, and I think I will like to be associated. I mean, there's a website called Quartz, right? It's a very, very good website as far as I can make out. It's been sponsored, I think, long term by GE. I think then that might be the same thing. You know, it's like an endowment. Somebody says, listen, I believe you do good work, and I'm going to support you. But this traditional ad-supported stuff with 1 million page views, it's this CPM, that doesn't work. So I think you should totally rule it out anyway.
I have a question. Now, what is prompted media? What has prompted media to go for a new development, that is paid media? Now, this paid media is now very difficult to understand for I mean, I am an educated person and I read newspapers, I see television also and participate in discussion, but then I am unable to, is it only better for money or is there something more to it? Thank you.
It's an extremely valid question, a very, very debated question today in today's context. Very relevant one. Sushilji said something in his address at the beginning, when media is dharma, and if it goes weak, I mean, you become vulnerable. Even Shrikant also opened it up. The fact of the matter is that the print, especially the paid news, is a print problem, and when you are becoming weak and you are becoming desperate for revenues, probably this is what is happening. I also feel that this is a issue of value system of the media owners who indulge or who go for the paid news. Because at one end there are people who want to get into it and who want that the coverage to be done in any ways, and the other end there is a person who can do that. So the choice is to be made, and if you want to make an easy choice, you can do that. But from my experience, I know that it affects the brand terribly, and it's not going to take you too far, because reader is very, very intelligent and he is able to differentiate between a paid news and a non-paid news. And as I said in my address, that the reader wants to see himself into the media now, into the media asset that is there. The paid news doesn't take it anywhere. So the whole experience, whole engagement goes for a toss. It's not a good thing, my personal take on this. However, it is there in the business, but there are some groups who have confined this paid news business to a certain I would say, genre of the entertainment or news. To that extent, if it is, maybe it would be okay, but when it starts affecting your choices, when it starts affecting your opinions, I think that's where it matters a lot.
You will recall that Pandit Sainath was the one who had brought up this question of media during Maharashtra and previous Maharashtra election. Now the point is that he has raised a very relevant point. Is media interested in taking them or not?
I think Sushil.
You know, can I just make one point? You know, I mean, I've been in the business a long time, and I know first in the profession and now in the business, okay? And I think one thing I would just like, I think it's a shameful thing what's happening, and especially when it happens in an organized way. It's really, really shameful. But I've realized one thing over the years, that the freedom, it's really it is what we believe, it's the freedom to do the right thing. And if you want that freedom, then you have to pay the price for it. Okay? If a business refuses to pay the price because it says advertiser naraz ho jayega or that guy is paying me, then this is what will happen. The only thing I want to point out is that this is not something peculiar to media. There are, there are a lot of professions which are within businesses. Okay, so there is the media, there is the journalism, which is in the business of media. Okay, there are doctors who practice medicine inside hospitals. This is no different from the doctor who does a cesarean because the mother cannot they can't decide whether it ought to be a cesarean or it ought to be a natural delivery. There are engineers who work with developers who put sand when they should put cement. So my point is that there are professions and which work inside businesses. First, I do believe that the professionals have to stand up first. I don't think it's enough to just blame the business part of it. There are people, so I think freedom doesn't come for free. If people want to fight for that freedom, then they should really first try to fight it, So that's what I'm saying. It's not peculiar to media.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Shiji, my question addressed to Mr. Shri R.R. Gopalji. Sir, is it true that today the vernacular publication having a setback? Is it because of the migration, the new generation is not giving due importance to the mother language? Now, literally it's happening in Northern India. The people migrated from various parts of the country, those who are migrated to Delhi, now you can see they have literally forgotten their own mother language. The children of the from the other states can only speak in their own mother, they cannot read and write. Is it the fact the vernacular publications are going through a very peculiar period? What is the solution for that?
This is a problem in states outside the vernacular language area. For example, from Tamil Nadu, there's a huge population which lives today in Delhi, in most of the metro cities in other states and in foreign countries. They speak English, they can read English, but or the other languages. But when it comes to the mother tongue, they can only speak, they can't read it, because they don't get the opportunity to learn their mother language or write unless the elders in the house make it a point that they should read and write the mother tongue language. So that has been a problem for the media to grow outside their own territory. So when we have a large population, for example, people say there is nearly 14 lakh people Tamilians living in Delhi who can read Tamil. But Tamil newspapers don't perform much here. Whatever we sell few thousand copies here. But they can watch Tamil movies, they watch Tamil news in television and all those things. So that is becoming a problem because the younger breed, particularly the parents, prefer their children to be more savvy in English than the mother tongue. And the invitation price of this English newspaper is also creating a lot of trouble for the vernacular newspapers, because you get a good bunch of it at 1 rupee. So
Gopalji, this actually is the same issue. I may just have a point here. It takes a lot of investment to start printing and publishing a newspaper edition. Now, if a newspaper printer, a publisher in Delhi decides that there is some market in this business, some value in this business, you can mop up 7 different publications from South and say, I can do a facsimile edition in Delhi. If there are even 10 to 15,000 copies each, you can run 100,000 copy business in Delhi catering to that ethnic crowd. The point is, we need to create linkages. Today, DTH or cable operators are delivering Tamil channels to wherever Tamils are or Malayalis are. Now, why can't print be delivered? Now, magazines were reaching here, but magazines are gradually receding because of their periodicity. So, somewhere there is an opportunity, there are spare capacities, there is a technology that brings newspaper pages facsimile here and can print early in the morning and deliver at the doorsteps just as they are delivered in Chennai, Madurai and Trichy.
I have to make a point on that, because there are two issues. One is a content delivery system is very easy nowadays. But the physical format of delivery of the newspaper is becoming the problem today, because there is no colonization of our people in each area. Like the Islamic crowd, they have certain pockets where the Muslims live in large crowd. But here, our crowd is more spread out throughout the city. So when there is no big numbers, getting distribution set up in place becomes a difficulty. So that's making one of the hindrances. Plus the younger crowd, people living in their 20s and 30s, who have been living here for past 20, 30 years, are more, they can only speak Tamil, they can't read Tamil, that's a problem. Because they have taken the second languages in school as Hindi or English or German or something like that. And that is a problem. Only the migrating people who come from our place, recently who migrated, they can read the papers. But they also prefer today to go on our online version. So they can read our e-newspaper, they get updates every half an hour. So that is also the one area which also hits us, the print.
So it's the ink on paper which is getting out of vogue. Sudeep, my friend, has a question. And you know you are eating away everybody's lunch. Bear that in mind.
Sorry, the thing is, it's not a question, it's just a suggestion. What Mr. I think Khandekar tried to, I think, almost answered the question which I had in mind, is that television, 43,000 crores, of which advertising is just 15 or 16,000 crores. The rest comes from subscriptions. And television is not afraid to charge subscriptions. Why is newspaper still being sold at a pittance? I pay 600 rupees, I get 3 newspapers, which is $10 a month. What stops newspaper from saying, okay, I will charge 20% more from next month because the newspaper...
Sudeep, this is a business strategy. It's an entry barrier. The moment you raise the prices of newspapers and circulation becomes a viable proposition, revenues from circulation becomes a viable proposition, there'll be few more newspapers in the city, few more entrepreneurs willing to put money, because then they will not have to depend on advertising when newspaper readers gather enough and when they can be able to monetize. So in order to keep competition at bay, in order to stop getting new newspapers coming into the market, the existing newspapers are making circulation-based business absolutely non-viable from day one. And that is something we need to question. You know, there are anti-dumping duties when imports happen below delivery prices. It is to protect the economy, it is to protect the viability of a marketplace. It is about time we start thinking in terms of anti-dumping duties in media. Because otherwise it is creating a distorted marketplace.
Sushil, I would tend to half agree with you. I know lunch is
this
waiting.
discussion can go on till the cows come home. People have to eat. I'm sorry, I'm responsible for finishing the session on time. Last moment.
Listen, I must point out to you that you may be paying 300 rupees for television, but you're getting 300 channels, okay? So that's about 1 rupee per month.
I watch 3 of them.
No, that's different. But for 300 you get the whole lot.
Actually, I pay 500 for my television. I watch television 4 times in a week and I still pay it.
No, but I think there is a very valuable point here. There are distortions in the business of media. These distortions need to be corrected. They need to be corrected for our own good, the consumers of media, not just the businessmen. They can live with these distortions by manipulating through them, finding their way, but for the larger society, democracy and the system to survive, for the plurality to flourish, we need a more orderly, evenly placed business environment that can flourish, that can create more options and allow 100 or 1 million or 1,000 flowers to bloom, as they say. Thank you very much for this session.